where I left off yesterday. I have a few changes as I was discovering calendar interface. I have to figure out how to lay these components out a bit better, but our struggle was when we hit the close button, we were supposed to resume the game, and there was some confusion here. When we paused the game, we were essentially doing two things: trying to pause the game, also resume the game was paused. So this signal call was taking care of two different things. So now I separated them, only paused. That way, uh, when the calendar is pressed in time interface here, we can only call the pause event within the calendar. When the close button is clicked to close the calendar interface right here, then it's going to resume the game. Um, Additionally, um, the behavior of this closing and opening UI component was going to interfere with the way the pause button, this interface would work. And also there was the combination of these speed buttons interfere with the, again, pause logic. So by separating, by splitting the event or the signal into two separate unique, now we can actually control everything without any problems. There was some kind of code repeat, all cleaned up. That's the only change. And I also edit this calendar pop-up. Right now, spacebar is pausing the game. Button click is resuming the game. We can pause the game with a button click. We can choose the speed number 1. The increments the time by 50 minutes. We can pause the game, choose a different factor. It's 25 minutes ahead. And then we can also go in different speed modes. And we can always pause. And do this. Now calendar should normally pause the game if the game is run in the slow mode, in the normal speed. So calendar button should be on UI, pausing the game. When we hit this close button, this UI will close. Will actually we have the close button. We do have close pressed, and we are trying to resume the game, but the fact that it's not working, same reason came across yesterday. The pause mode is inheriting from the game process, which is pausing everything. So also, um, this close button should close the calendar pop-up itself. So I'm probably going to write this for tutorial purposes here. What is self here? Because coming from JavaScript background, the definition of this keyword in JavaScript, that's context specific. So when we write self here, do we actually mean self as the button, the close button, because this is the function that's bound to close button, or is this the class itself where I'm writing? So I know the answer, but let's just it is actually referring to the pop-up panel. So technically, we could do something like this. Pop-up is actually opening the calendar. Well, I don't know the word, but close one bit. Let's see. Pop panel, pop-up, upsend. I was hoping to have a method that would turn it off. But to show hide, pop-up hide. So there be a method. I do remember using hide. Pop-up panel is control, and this actually generic to all control event. Control. Let's just try hide and because self is referring to itself, I'll just call. We are going to fire resume game, and game is running normally. Calendar closed. Close the calendar. And now I think I should be taking care of this mess here because I was throwing a bunch of stuff everywhere. So what was I trying to do? I would have title. How much time do you want to make it sound a bit? So we have a VBox content for the date slider. And now we will have two buttons. This could actually be a vertical I could put all these three entities inside a VBox content, but I'm just gonna try something away with it. Because right now it's expanding. I don't remember setting it like this. Why did it? And these two could actually you know what? I think I will, and all this will probably change in the future because um, we'll take care of. There are these are default components. I may have to do proper UI skinning later. we're only doing the vertical slice for the time. So this is going to be defined as the file itself. Will all okay, we put the close button here instead of the, again, these are some design considerations that will be refined later, whether we have close button upright line to the bottom. So this part is way. This might actually margin. We would generally have a margin side and this one 10 pixels off the edge. Horizontal, but if it's two buttons, go like instead of go just at the bottom, so it takes as much space as the button plus. This part could be title part. We could actually size here. Or what if we actually did this space? It kind of shares this between devices space evenly between this VBox label itself. Right? This guy is just arbitrarily cheap. 70, even 40. Actually, some instead of doing alignment begin at center, that way we can calendar what we want to see as tidied up as possible. Aha. Same thing again with the pose. The game is posed, therefore no UI component is pose button. Process the events that are happening. So your option is that you go into each component to change the pose mode to process, but I think we could do something. We could set the calendar pose mode process. Now, because every component inside the calendar node, under calendar node, is inheriting from its parent. Therefore, when the calendar pose mode is processed, it should actually let all the components inside work. It's a different color. Yeah, I was changing the here, but the component actually fired its. Only this beginning part is changed. Save // click go. Okay. Calendar. I'm just noticing some kind of view. I have the mouse scroll logic zooming in, but that is also a default behavior enabled for scrolling the sliders. So when you scroll up, you are actually increasing the slider, but that's also something later. So the next thing is True button. So when we move the game time 4 years, 3 months to 2 days and 9 hours, click approve, which should resume the game, add the dates. We should see the date reflected on the top left corner. Let's look at the time scene. Now calendar component here will change something in time is currently the time PD script. The approve is going to happen in calendar. So we have to trigger this function within calendar. This is when I was talking about moving all these time functions into its own singleton, perhaps. Or we could simply handle these signals. It's another. It's this kind of thing is always a moving target. Right now, we seem to have only 2 systems accessing add date. But when we increase the number of items that controlling time, we might have to change our architecture. Out loud. Right now, the way calendar component interacts with some of the functionality in the time script is through an event bus and through firing signals. That's how we pause or resume the because conventionally, when you have scene inside another scene, you could actually do something. Well, calendar will fire its own signal. It will be listened by time. Time will actually its own event handler. We don't do that because when you move nodes around, then you start to play this game of like, I send a signal to my parent, and the parent will send that signal to its own parent. That we bypass that through event bus. So we actually reach the highest level script, and then whatever other scenes are out there, they are actually waiting for the right calls that are broadcast from the events. So as we are doing that, we could do the same thing. This in itself is acting like a time script, because we know this node will always be part of the game on each level or scenario. So let's connect it to signal. Separate some stuff here. To signal. It's about time. Time. Fast forward. Time. Time traveled. Traveled. Because I'm an anal person, is it traveled with one L or two L's? Um, travel, traveling fiction, traveled. Okay. Oh, both are possible. Or in British, travel it is with time traveled. On so when time is traveled, going to be past. What we're essentially doing here at time. Current time is kept in time variable coming from signal. New date is meaning that we are moving to a specific date, but it's actually different. That is actually the reason. There used to be a time when I called this date. Here. It's called new date. Let's go with this for now. So this should give us a new date. This is put in here. Only after we add the date, we will resume the game. However, when we change this date, I think we already take care of in process those date UI. So this will be running as soon as the game should take care of add date. Actually, add date should also call console date, because this is in arithmetic calculation. It's actually doing the boundary. And I remember that I should have fixed this part over 366 days. That is assuming that it's always day one. This should be below. Six. This would be either 5 or 6. Because when we normally run this function, we don't go too crazy with the hour and days value. Minutes are always hour and the day values forward. That transition is slow enough that it never moves the hours and days value too crazy. It also have smiley, same thing, standard boundary. Should be here. Well, x3 due date also passed best date with signal time travel. Instead, so calendar this. So we want to move it only 2 days. Should see 148. Game will resume and we'll like to move this 5 minutes forward. We have an error, but get in. Method get index. This one is probably good because here it's the time. It's time. Whatever is a new date, some inconsistent naming convention. Because I treated this as constants. that, except when we now the way we are passing these components. In these will lesson learned. I believe something similar to time goes, but just set it normal. I will keep this few days. Oh, yeah, we chose not to. Okay. Yes, we didn't want to move the minutes forward. We also introduced month concept. So we actually have to normalize patients for now. When we move this, when we pass this date back to the time script, minute value here will always be time. Yeah, there has to be some kind of sanitization. Say sanitized. It actually directly change whatever month value we have. We will multiply it by 30 days, and before we pass date object back to time function, should the number of 30 days times month value, and minute is always set to 0, so this, because this way it's 0. Don't actually. Okay, awesome. Only problem is it not because we are actually not hiding. Let's try the month logic, and we'll try to do the out of bounds parts when it's close to the end of the day. We want to move this a month to 176 days. I'll just give 4 more days, then 8. That's good. And this is the part that I think I referred to yesterday as don't have the values reset when it's a pop-up. It's never compiling from scratch. More important, it's say 1 month and 34 days. Oh shit. 14, but it added 30 more. Yeah, that was my. So it is cumulatively adding another 30 days. When I hit the approve button, it should actually add 60, then the 34 we see, which is going to be out of bounds. So no, 34 plus 64, 438. So we either figure out a way to reset this. Makes more sense because why would you want to see the old wheel? But from user experience point, player wants to move the game forward pretty much always at regular intervals. Let the game the value. What we can do for now sounds like a decision. The calendar is ready. First of all, the point where when this, what are you? That pop-up is actually ready, just hidden. When you do this, it's always going to, I mean, once for that reason, about to show. So when it's about to show, we should reset these. But to reset these values, like the components by control, because when they show 0, player changes. If the UI controls show 0, if there are values already kept, because in the previous session, they should be, they should both be 0. Date. I think this is probably the reason why I did pop up this game, because there was a lot of resetting going. I went with a different that was always recompiling the. Maybe that's a more expensive way, but it seemed the right thing. Set date, essentially date. Set date. After this, title, value, value, everything. And these two should be called what? Show. Also called. And enter tree, exit tree is also when it's part of the scene. It's always part. You can actually call these. I think I could still pass. Here we go. Did 4 days, get to 80, so 0. I hit, no change. What we want. I want to 2 months, going to be with 1 year. 1 year. But the sun also fixed. 1 month, 8 days plus 2. One more. I think in the prototype, I remember putting we'll have one more row for convenience. You do the math right. It's another. So when we add 12 days, 170 days, 65 days. So we should go back to 5th day of the 3rd year. And where it blew up. New melody operands loads. So one of these values. I think this is a good moment for me to stop and launch. Continue later